Stop searching for meaning, start creating it. There is a moment in life when the questions become louder than the answers, a moment when you wake up with the weight of uncertainty pressing against your chest. You look at your job, your relationships, your dreams, and something inside whispers that there should be more clarity, more purpose, more meaning. You search for signs, you wait for direction, you ask life to speak, yet all you hear is silence. And in that silence you begin to wonder if something is wrong with you, if you missed the path, if everyone else received a map that you never got. But what if the problem is not that your life lacks meaning? What if the problem is that you were taught to look for it in the wrong places? You were taught to dig through the past, scan the future, analyze every thought, and dissect every choice, hoping that purpose would appear like a puzzle piece you accidentally misplaced. You think that once you find the right path, everything will click into place, confidence will rise, motivation will ignite, peace will settle. But the truth is far more confronting. You do not find meaning, you create it. This is the shift Marcus Aurelius understood. Meaning is not discovered by thinking. Meaning is sculpted by living. And that realization is terrifying at first, because it gives the responsibility back to you. It forces you to face the fact that purpose will not knock at your door. It will not fall from the sky. It will not suddenly illuminate your mind during a quiet night. Purpose is built through action, discipline, courage, and ownership. It is the life you make, not the one you wait for. You live in a world obsessed with answers, a world that pushes you toward constant introspection until your mind becomes overcrowded with doubts. You compare yourself to others. You scroll through endless highlight reels. You convince yourself that everyone has more clarity than you, that they know something you do not. Yet the Stoics remind you that the path is not hidden. The path begins the moment you stop imagining who you are supposed to be and start working on becoming someone you can respect. Meaning grows when you move, when you choose your values and live by them, when you take responsibility for your decisions, when you stop waiting for signs and start becoming the sign. And the more you shape your character through action, the clearer your purpose becomes. Not because the world changed, but because you did. This video is the beginning of that shift. A shift from searching to creating, from questioning to building, from overthinking to committing. If your life feels aimless, it is not a sign that you failed. It is a sign that you are ready to begin, ready to take ownership, ready to step into a life that is not found but forged. And once you understand this, you stop living passively and start shaping your days with intention. Your clarity begins to rise from the very choices you make. Your sense of direction becomes something you strengthen, not something you discover. This introduction is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to wake you up, to remind you that you are not lost, you are uncreated, you are unshaped, you are unfinished. And that is not a weakness. It is your greatest opportunity, because from this point on, your meaning will not depend on luck, destiny, or external validation. It will depend on the courage you bring into your daily actions. And now that you understand the foundation, it is time to break the first illusion that keeps so many people stuck. The modern trap, waiting for life to reveal itself. There is a silent trap most people fall into without noticing, a trap that feels rational, even responsible. You pause your life and wait for clarity. You wait for a sign. You wait for the perfect moment when everything becomes obvious. You think that purpose is supposed to announce itself with certainty, with a clear direction, with the confidence you currently lack. So you hold your breath, you stay still, you analyze every angle of your circumstances, believing that a revelation will appear if you think hard enough. Yet the longer you wait, the more lost you feel. Not because your purpose is missing, but because you are expecting something life never promised to give. This waiting becomes a habit. You delay decisions, you postpone actions, you convince yourself that you need more time, more insight, more confidence. You say you are preparing, but deep down you know you are avoiding. avoiding the discomfort of stepping into the unknown, avoiding the fear of choosing wrong, avoiding the burden of responsibility that comes with shaping your own path. And this quiet avoidance disguises itself as reflection. It looks thoughtful, it feels safe, but it leads to stagnation. Marcus Aurelius warned against this paralysis. He reminded himself daily that the world moves with or without your permission. That action is the engine of purpose. That hesitation is the enemy of becoming. The Stoics understood something many people still refuse to accept. The moment you wait for certainty before acting is the moment you surrender the creation of your life to randomness. You give your story to chance, hoping it will deliver something meaningful without your participation. You have been taught to believe that clarity precedes action, that motivation appears first, then discipline follows. Yet every Stoic, every creator, every person who built something meaningful learned the opposite. Action creates clarity, discipline gives birth to direction, meaning emerges from the steps you take, not the thoughts you circle. The truth is simple. You do not think your way into purpose, you move your way into it. But the modern world pulls you into the opposite rhythm. It feeds you constant information. It overloads your mind with options. It convinces you that you must choose perfectly. That one wrong decision will destroy your future. That every path must be predicted before you take it. So you freeze. You live as if you are one choice away from collapse. You hold your potential hostage to fear disguised as caution. The more you wait, the heavier the waiting becomes. You begin to feel disconnected. You begin to wonder why your motivation is fading. You start comparing your progress with others who seem to be moving forward. And each comparison becomes another reason to doubt yourself. You assume they found their path because they were lucky enough to receive clarity. But clarity did not come to them first. Action did. They stepped into uncertainty and built their direction through commitment, through mistakes, through trial and correction. You forget that your purpose cannot be revealed by thinking about it. Purpose becomes visible only to those who are in motion. You cannot see the path while standing still. You can only see it by walking. That is why waiting feels so suffocating. Your mind is trying to understand something that can only be understood through experience. You look for meaning like a treasure map when you should be shaping it like a craftsman. This trap keeps you stuck because it offers comfort. Waiting protects you from failure. It shields you from discomfort. It keeps your identity unchallenged. As long as you are waiting, you do not have to confront your insecurities or test your potential. But that comfort is costly. It costs your growth. It costs your confidence. It costs the life you could have lived if you had been willing to move despite the uncertainty. Stoicism gives you a different instruction. Stop waiting for life to reveal itself. Life reveals itself when you participate, when you act, when you build, when you dare to choose even when the outcome is not guaranteed. When you stop asking for a perfect path and start creating a path that reflects who you want to become, you do not need more time. You do not need more certainty. You need movement. Even a small step breaks the illusion that you are lost. Because the moment you act, you prove to yourself that you are capable of shaping your direction. You begin to understand that meaning grows when you engage with life, not when you hide from it. This is where your transformation begins. By recognizing that the trap of waiting is not protection, it is paralysis. And the moment you break it, the world begins to open again. The Stoic shift. Meaning is what you do, repeatedly. There is a point where searching becomes exhausting. You look for meaning in conversations, relationships, accomplishments, failures, dreams, and even in moments of silence. Yet the feeling remains the same. Something inside you still feels unfinished. Something still feels undefined. And you start believing that meaning is a secret reserved for people who are wiser, more spiritual, or more privileged than you. But Stoicism gives you a different truth. Meaning is not reserved. Meaning is not hidden. Meaning is not discovered by a chosen few. Meaning is constructed through repetition, through the things you do consistently, through the habits that shape your character long before they shape your results. Marcus Aurelius lived with unimaginable pressure. A ruler, a philosopher, a military leader, a human being with doubts and fears. Yet when he wrote about purpose, he avoided the mystical, he avoided the abstract. He grounded meaning in daily life, in duty, in discipline, in the small actions that align who you are with who you want to be. He never said, "Find your purpose." He said, "Do what is in front of you with clarity and intention." Because the Stoics knew that meaning is not an idea. Meaning is identity expressed through action. You can think all day about becoming disciplined, but meaning appears only when you wake up early and follow through. You can imagine being a person of integrity, but meaning appears only when you honor your word, even when it is uncomfortable. You can dream about living a purposeful life, but meaning appears only when your choices reflect your values repeatedly. Meaning is not the spark. Meaning is the fire that grows from daily commitment. Modern culture trains you to chase extraordinary moments, the breakthrough, the revelation, the life-changing insight that suddenly makes everything clear. But real purpose is built in ordinary days, in the choices no one sees, in the moments when your mind tells you to stop and you move anyway, in the moments when you feel lost, but you stay committed to something that strengthens your character. Meaning comes from lifestyle, not lightning strikes. This is why so many people feel directionless. They are searching for what should be created. They want clarity without commitment. They want identity without discipline. They want purpose without responsibility. But identity is formed the same way a muscle is formed, through repetition, resistance, and consistency. The Stoics trained their minds daily, not because they enjoyed struggle, but because they understood something essential. You become what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly question your worth, you become unsure. If you repeatedly avoid difficult choices, you become fragile. If you repeatedly postpone action, you become stagnant. But the opposite is also true. If you repeatedly act with courage, you become courageous. If you repeatedly stay focused despite distractions, you become disciplined. If you repeatedly align your actions with your values, you become purposeful. Meaning grows from the behaviors you reinforce. Every day you either weaken your identity or strengthen it. Every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. There is a powerful freedom in this realization. You no longer have to wait for external confirmation to feel purposeful. You no longer need life to give you signs. You no longer depend on motivation or inspiration. You can build meaning with what you do today, with the habits you commit to, with the standards you hold yourself to even when no one is watching. Because purpose grows in silence, long before the world recognizes it. This shift is uncomfortable because it eliminates excuses. When you understand that meaning is in your control, you can no longer blame the past, your circumstances, or your uncertainty. But this discomfort is the doorway to transformation. The moment you accept that meaning is built through action, you gain the power to create a life that reflects your values. You stop feeling lost because you stop expecting clarity to guide you. You guide yourself by becoming the kind of person who takes deliberate, consistent action regardless of how you feel. The world tells you to search. Stoicism tells you to build. The world tells you to wait for purpose. Stoicism tells you to create purpose through repetition. The world tells you to follow your feelings. Stoicism tells you to follow your principles. Meaning is not a destination. It is a pattern, a rhythm, a foundation laid brick by brick every day. And once you embrace this philosophy, your life stops feeling aimless, because you understand that every action is shaping you, every decision is defining you, every repetition is carving meaning into the structure of your identity. This chapter opens the door. The next chapter reveals the enemy that tries to stop you before you even begin. Why overthinking kills purpose. Before it begins. There is a moment when your mind becomes louder than your life. You sit still, trying to make the perfect decision, and suddenly every option fractures into 1,000 possibilities. You replay the past, you imagine the future, you question your abilities, you analyze consequences that have not even happened, and in that mental storm you convince yourself that you are being responsible. You tell yourself you are preparing, you believe you are being thoughtful, but beneath all that noise lies a simple truth. Overthinking is the silent killer of purpose. It destroys direction long before you even take your first step. Overthinking gives you the illusion of progress. You feel busy, you feel engaged, you feel like you are doing something meaningful by mentally rearranging your fears, hopes, and doubts. But nothing changes. Nothing moves. You remain in the same place, trapped inside your thoughts. The Stoics warned about this mental paralysis. Epictetus said that people suffer not from events themselves, but from their judgments about them. And when your judgments multiply without limit, you drown in them. The tragedy is that the mind convinces you that more thinking will eventually lead to clarity. Yet the opposite is true. The more you think, the more uncertain you become. Overthinking is not a search for answers. It is an attempt to eliminate all risk, all discomfort, all vulnerability. You want certainty before action. You want predictability before movement. But life does not work that way. Purpose is built through engagement, not mental rehearsal. Every great transformation begins with a step, not with a theory. But when you depend on overthinking for confidence, you sabotage yourself. You analyze so deeply that every path looks dangerous. You scrutinize so intensely that every idea loses its spark. You imagine so many outcomes that you forget the simplicity of doing what is in front of you. You overwhelm your courage with endless scenarios, and the result is predictable. You do nothing. You wait. You retreat. You stay inside the prison of your own analysis. The Stoics understood that the mind is a tool, not a master. When you let it run uncontrolled, it becomes a barrier. It feeds you fears disguised as logic. It creates problems that do not exist. It magnifies your weaknesses and buries your strengths. Overthinking is not intelligence. Overthinking is fear dressed as strategy. It keeps you from the action that gives your life meaning. And because it feels safe, you rarely question it. You must understand something essential. Purpose requires movement. Meaning requires engagement. Identity requires decisions. You cannot think yourself into a stronger life. You must act your way into one. Overthinking prevents this process by keeping your attention on hypotheticals instead of realities. It tricks you into believing that waiting will give you clarity. But clarity comes from experience. Confidence comes from repetition. Direction comes from committing, adjusting, and continuing. When you overthink, you inflate the importance of your fears. You give your doubts the authority they do not deserve. You convince yourself that everything must be perfect before you begin. Yet Stoicism teaches the opposite. Begin and perfection will stop mattering. Begin and your fear will shrink. Begin and your path will start shaping itself through your actions. You cannot steer a ship that remains anchored, and you cannot guide a life that remains stuck in thought. Overthinking also distorts your sense of self. You begin to believe you are fragile because your fears feel so vivid in your mind. You begin to believe you are unprepared because your doubts sound so convincing. You begin to believe that others are more capable because you only see their actions while you drown in your questions. But this is not reality. It is the shadow world your mind creates when you give it too much power. The antidote is not to think less, but to think with discipline, to question your thoughts instead of obeying them, to separate fear from truth, to recognize that every meaningful action carries uncertainty, but uncertainty is not a threat. uncertainty is life. The Stoics welcomed it because it forced them to grow. It forced them to sharpen their character. It forced them to rise above the noise of their own minds. When you break the habit of overthinking, you regain your strength. You stop trying to predict and start participating. You stop magnifying obstacles and start facing them. You stop waiting for clarity and start creating it through motion. Purpose begins to form the moment you step out of your head and into your life. And every step you take becomes an antidote to doubt. This chapter breaks the illusion. The next chapter will show how meaning is crafted through small, deliberate actions that accumulate into the identity you are seeking. The power of crafting your meaning through small acts. Meaning does not arrive in a single moment. It does not appear through revelation, luck, or the sudden alignment of your life. It grows quietly through the small acts you repeat every day. And because these acts look simple, most people ignore them. They underestimate the power of showing up consistently. They overlook the truth that identity is built in micro moments. They search for purpose in the extraordinary, while abandoning the ordinary choices that shape who they become. Yet Stoicism teaches that meaning is a craft, something you build with intention, something you strengthen one decision at a time, something that begins small long before it becomes visible. You may think your life needs dramatic change to feel purposeful, but meaning usually begins in places no one sees, in the discipline of waking up when your mind begs you to stay in bed, in the decision to put aside distractions and focus for 1 hour, in the honesty of keeping a promise you made to yourself, in the courage of saying no to something that drains you. These moments look insignificant, but they carve your character. They establish the foundation of who you are becoming. And with every small act aligned with your values, your identity becomes stronger. Most people try to change their lives through big plans and dramatic intentions. But intentions collapse without supporting habits. Purpose collapses without daily reinforcement. Motivation collapses without structure. The Stoics knew that the smallest act done consistently holds more power than the largest idea left undone. A single disciplined choice repeated daily can reshape your entire trajectory, because meaning is not a feeling. Meaning is the accumulation of aligned actions. When you take a small step, you send a message to yourself. You prove that you are capable of directing your life. You create momentum. You transform potential energy into movement. And movement is what generates clarity. One small act leads to another. One disciplined choice opens the door for the next. And gradually, without noticing, you begin to embody the life you once believed you needed to find. You stop thinking about who you want to be and start living as that person in small, consistent ways. Your brain is shaped by repetition. Your identity is shaped by consistency. Your meaning is shaped by the choices you reinforce. When you embrace the power of small acts, you reclaim your agency. You realize that every day offers you dozens of opportunities to strengthen your principles, your discipline, your purpose. You understand that meaning is not something you chase, it is something you practice. Small acts matter because they bypass resistance. They are manageable, they are achievable, they are within your control. And every time you complete one, you weaken the voice that tells you to wait for the perfect moment. You weaken the part of you that believes you are not ready. You weaken the fear that keeps you stuck. Small actions turn purpose into something tangible, something you can feel through your behavior, not just imagine in your mind. The world often celebrates sudden transformation, but Stoicism celebrates steady evolution. The kind of growth that is grounded, reliable, unshakable, because it does not rely on emotion. It relies on discipline. Emotion is unpredictable, discipline is deliberate. When you commit to small acts, you create a path that does not collapse every time life becomes difficult. You create meaning that survives uncertainty. You create an identity that stands firm even when motivation fades. Imagine a craftsman shaping a piece of wood. Each cut seems small, each stroke seems insignificant, but over time, the shape emerges, the structure becomes clear, the purpose becomes visible. That is how meaning works. You shape it, you refine it, you carve it into existence through daily effort. And eventually you look at your life and realize you are no longer searching for purpose, you are expressing it. This chapter reveals the foundation. The next chapter will show you how to turn that foundation into a purpose you can rely on, even on the days when life feels heavy and your motivation disappears. Building a purpose you can stand behind even on bad days. There comes a point when the pursuit of meaning must become stronger than your mood. Anyone can feel purposeful on a good day. Anyone can feel motivated when life is smooth, when energy is high, when the path looks close and attainable. But the real test of your purpose is how it holds up when everything inside you wants to stop, when you feel tired, when you feel overwhelmed, when doubt sits on your shoulders like extra weight. Those are the days when meaning either collapses or becomes unbreakable. And the difference depends entirely on what that meaning is built on. If your purpose depends on emotion, it will fail. If it depends on motivation, it will fade. If it depends on clarity, it will waver. But if it is built on values, discipline, and principles, it becomes a source of strength even in your lowest moments. The Stoics understood this intimately. They knew that life would not always cooperate, that storms would come, that the mind would grow tired, that loss, fear, and uncertainty would shake anyone who lives long enough. So they built their meaning on something more solid than feeling. They built it on character. This is why so many people feel like their purpose dissolves under pressure. Their meaning was never grounded in something stable. It was grounded in circumstances, emotions, external success, or the approval of others. These pillars crumble easily. One setback can destroy them. One moment of criticism can weaken them. One unexpected challenge can make them question everything. But when your purpose is tied to your values, nothing external can take it away. You may be shaken, but you are not broken. You may feel lost, but you do not forget who you are. Building a purpose you can stand behind means choosing principles that do not change with your mood. It means committing to a standard of behavior that remains steady even when life is unpredictable. It means deciding what kind of person you want to be, regardless of how convenient or inconvenient that decision becomes. This is why meaning must be anchored in action. Actions can continue even when feelings fluctuate. Values can guide you even when motivation fades. Discipline can carry you even when enthusiasm is gone. On bad days, your mind will challenge you. It will tell you that your work does not matter, that your progress is too slow, that your efforts are invisible, that you are failing because you cannot feel the same energy you felt yesterday. But feelings are weather. They shift, they pass, they rise and fall with no warning. You cannot build a life on something so unstable. What you can build on is choice, commitment, repetition, integrity. These are the structures that hold you together when your emotions try to pull you apart. Think about the person you respect most, whether from history or from your own life. It is not their good days that define them. It is their ability to move forward when things were difficult. Their ability to act from principle when acting from emotion would have been easier. Their ability to stay aligned with what matters to them, even when it came at a cost. Meaning grows when you live by values that do not collapse when life pressures you. This does not mean you must feel strong every day. It means you must be willing to act from something deeper than your current state. It means that on days when your confidence disappears, you still honor your commitments. On days when your mind is scattered, you still choose one disciplined action. On days when you feel empty, you still anchor yourself to the values you decided long before your emotions changed. This is inner strength, not the absence of struggle, but the ability to continue despite it. Purpose becomes reliable when it becomes part of your identity. Not a goal you chase, but a standard you carry, a way of being, a way of showing up. When your actions match your principles repeatedly, you create a sense of meaning that is immune to your lowest moods. You stop depending on motivation because you no longer wait to feel like the person you want to be. You live as that person, even when it is difficult. This is the transformation Stoicism pushes you toward, a life grounded in what you control, a sense of direction that remains steady even when the world around you shifts, a purpose that grows stronger in adversity instead of shrinking from it. Because purpose is not something you feel, it is something you embody, and embodiment is built through consistent action, especially on the days when you least want to take it. This chapter prepares the ground for the next shift, where you stop asking what your purpose is and start asking a more powerful question that changes everything about how you move through the world. Stop asking, "What is my purpose?" and start asking, "What can I create?" There comes a moment when the question you keep asking becomes the very thing holding you back. You have spent years asking, "What is my purpose?" and as if the answer were hidden somewhere outside of you, waiting to be uncovered like a buried treasure. But every time you ask that question, you reinforce the belief that purpose is something separate from your actions, something distant, something mysterious, something that must reveal itself to you before you can begin your life. Stoicism flips this idea upside down. It refuses to let you remain a passive observer, waiting for meaning to strike. It challenges you to stop searching and start shaping, to stop asking what your purpose is and start asking what you can build, contribute, and create with the time you have. This shift rewires your entire approach to life. What is my purpose? Keeps you trapped in reflection. It pulls you inward into a loop of endless analysis. But what can I create pushes you outward. It directs your attention toward action, expression, contribution, and responsibility. It forces you to participate in your own development instead of waiting to be granted direction. Purpose becomes something you sculpt through effort, not something you wait to receive like a gift. The Stoics lived with a sense of urgency, not because they were anxious, but because they understood the unpredictability of life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that time is slipping away, that every moment wasted in hesitation is a moment of creation lost. Seneca warned that people often live as if they will have unlimited opportunities to begin. They believe there will always be a better moment, a more certain moment, a safer moment. But those moments rarely come, and the people who live waiting for perfect clarity end up living lives of slow decay. Their potential evaporates not through failure, but through inactivity. When you ask, "What can I create?" you take ownership. You step into the role of an architect rather than a wanderer. You stop trying to interpret signs from the universe and start becoming a sign yourself. You shift from passive longing to active building. And in that shift, something remarkable happens. Motivation begins to follow you instead of leading you. Confidence begins to emerge because confidence grows from doing, not thinking. Direction becomes clearer because direction is revealed through movement, not contemplation. Creation is not limited to artistic expression. Creation is choosing a path and shaping it. Creation is building discipline. Creation is forming habits that support your values. Creation is developing a skill, improving your character, strengthening your mind. Creation is contributing to others, adding value to the world around you through actions, words, presence, or resilience. Your purpose is not a sentence waiting to be discovered. Your purpose is the effect your life has on the world, as a result of what you choose to create. Asking, "What can I create?" also dissolves the fear of choosing incorrectly. It stops you from believing that one wrong choice will ruin your life. Instead, it teaches you that you can shape meaning from whatever path you commit to. There is no single correct purpose for you to find. There are only values you embody and actions you take that bring those values to life. Purpose becomes flexible, adaptive, and resilient because it is no longer tied to a single definition. It is tied to your growth. This question also forces you to confront your untapped potential. You begin to see that meaning expands when you take responsibility for your abilities, when you refuse to waste the strengths you have been given, when you decide to make your time matter, when you stop waiting for emotional permission and start creating because creation itself is the gateway to purpose. People lose themselves when they spend their lives searching for meaning. People find themselves when they create meaning through commitment. The moment you shift from seeking purpose to creating it, you take back your power. The uncertainty that once paralyzed you becomes irrelevant. You stop fearing failure because you understand that creation is the antidote. Every action becomes a chance to shape your identity. Every effort becomes a step toward becoming the person you admire. Every choice becomes a narrative you are writing intentionally instead of drifting through by accident. This is the turning point. You are no longer a seeker. You are a builder. You are no longer someone waiting for life to give you direction. You are someone who gives direction to your own life. And once you embrace this question, what can I create? You step into a life that feels honest, grounded, and intrinsically meaningful. This chapter prepares you for the deeper truth ahead, where meaning expands when it connects to something greater than your individual ambitions. The Stoic practice of becoming useful to something greater. There is a stage in every person's growth where personal meaning is no longer enough. You develop discipline, you build habits, you create a sense of direction, but eventually you realize that a life built only around your own desires feels incomplete. You can become efficient, you can become focused, you can even become successful. Yet something still feels hollow if your purpose ends at your own borders. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that meaning reaches its highest form when it becomes connected to something bigger than the self. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in the quiet, deliberate intention to be useful. To yourself, to others, and to the world you move through. This idea is not about sacrificing your life or becoming selfless to the point of exhaustion. It is about recognizing that human beings are wired for contribution. We are strengthened by the roles we play in the lives around us. We grow when our actions matter beyond our personal benefit. Seneca wrote that no one becomes wise alone. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that humans exist to work together, as hands, feet, and eyes work together in one body. And Epictetus taught that you cannot live a meaningful life if your purpose is rooted only in your own comfort. Meaning deepens when your actions ripple beyond your immediate needs. Think about the moments when you felt most alive. They were not the moments when you isolated yourself from the world. They were the moments when you helped someone without being asked, when you shared something valuable, when you offered strength, guidance, clarity, or kindness. Those moments felt meaningful because they connected you to something larger than your personal thoughts. You were not lost in your own mind. You were engaged. You were contributing. You were part of something. Becoming useful is not about scale. You do not need to change the world. You do not need to move crowds or lead nations. You can be useful in the smallest ways. Through the patience you show someone who is struggling, through the work you do with integrity, even when no one is watching, through the example you set by living with discipline instead of chaos, through the wisdom you share, through the courage you display, through the love you offer. Meaning is strengthened when your life becomes a source of support, stability, or inspiration for someone else. When you shift your mindset from "what do I want from life" to "what can my life give?" the fog that once clouded your direction begins to dissolve. You become anchored. You feel grounded. Because you are no longer drifting inside your own thoughts. You are connected to a purpose that does not collapse the moment you have a bad day. Personal ambitions can fail. Emotions can fade. Enthusiasm can disappear. But responsibility to something greater than yourself has the power to pull you forward, even when your inner motivation goes quiet. The modern world tells you to focus entirely on yourself. It encourages hyper-individualism, personal achievement, self-centered ambition. But this approach often leads to isolation. It leads to emptiness disguised as independence. Stoicism teaches a different form of strength, the kind that grows from interconnection. You become stronger when you play a meaningful role in the world around you. You become more disciplined when your effort matters beyond your own pride. You become more resilient when your purpose supports not only your life, but the lives of others. This does not mean you must live for approval. Stoicism warns against chasing validation because validation makes you dependent. Being useful is not about being praised. It is about aligning your life with values that outlast your mood, your fears, and your temporary insecurities. When your meaning is rooted in contribution, it becomes stable. It becomes less fragile. It becomes something you can rely on when your personal ambitions no longer feel inspiring. The shift toward becoming useful also eliminates a great deal of anxiety. When you stop focusing on finding a perfect personal purpose and start focusing on contributing, your actions become clearer. Contribution is straightforward. You do what aligns with your principles. You take responsibility for the impact you create. You show up with integrity. And through this, meaning grows naturally, almost effortlessly, because it is supported by the structure of your values and the reality of your behavior. Once you understand that meaning expands through contribution, you begin to view your life differently. Every action becomes an opportunity to express your values. Every interaction becomes a chance to strengthen your character. Every day becomes a field where purpose can be practiced, shaped, and reinforced. You are no longer waiting for life to show you why you matter. You are proving it through what you give, how you behave, and the principles you choose to embody. This chapter opens the door to the freedom that comes when you stop chasing meaning and start living it. The next chapter reveals what happens when you release the pressure to define your purpose and instead begin to experience life with clarity, presence, and inner peace. The freedom that arrives when you stop looking and start living. There is a quiet relief that begins to unfold the moment you stop forcing your life to make sense before you live it. For years, you may have believed that understanding must come first, that you need a clear identity before taking action, that you need a perfect roadmap before taking the first step. But once you let go of that pressure, something profound begins to shift. Your mind becomes lighter. Your chest feels less tight. Your internal dialogue becomes less frantic. You begin to move with a sense of grounded clarity instead of anxious searching. This is the freedom Stoicism leads you toward, the freedom that comes not from answers, but from engagement. When you stop obsessing over purpose and begin living with intention, the noise inside your mind begins to fade. You are no longer paralyzed by the need to choose the perfect path. You stop fearing that a single wrong decision will ruin your life. You stop analyzing every angle of your desires. You realize that meaning comes not from predicting the future, but from participating in the present. The pressure to be perfect dissolves because purpose is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you express with each conscious decision you make. This freedom does not remove responsibility. It deepens it. When you understand that meaning is created, not found, you stop waiting for emotional permission to live. You stop believing that clarity must precede action. You recognize that your purpose grows from the way you show up each day, the way you speak to yourself, the way you respond to challenges, the way you treat others, the way you honor your values even when your motivation disappears. Responsibility stops feeling like a burden and begins to feel like liberation because it returns your life to your control. The modern world often glorifies freedom as the absence of limitations, commitments, or demands. But Stoicism teaches a more powerful definition. Freedom is the ability to act in alignment with your values, regardless of your circumstances. Freedom is the strength to choose discipline over impulse. Freedom is the clarity that comes from simplifying your mind. instead of overcrowding it with doubts. Freedom is not running from responsibility, but owning it fully. That ownership becomes the anchor that keeps you steady when everything around you is uncertain. When you stop searching for meaning, you reclaim the energy that constant analysis once drained from you. You redirect that energy toward creating, learning, helping, building, and improving. You start focusing on what is within your control. You stop drowning in hypotheticals. You begin to trust your ability to adapt instead of trying to manipulate every possible outcome. You understand that life will never be predictable, but you can always be deliberate. This shift creates a sense of inner stillness that is rare in the modern world. You no longer feel rushed. You no longer feel behind. You no longer compare your timeline to others. When you live with intention instead of desperation, your path becomes uniquely your own. You begin to appreciate small progress. You begin to feel proud of your discipline. You begin to value each action for what it contributes to your character rather than for what it achieves externally. Meaning starts to show itself not in grand achievements, but in how you carry yourself through ordinary moments, in how you handle disappointment, in how you remain steady under pressure, in how you treat people when no one is watching, in how you choose growth over avoidance. Meaning becomes visible in your presence, in the way you move, in the way you think, in the way you respond. This is the kind of purpose that cannot be taken from you, because it is expressed through who you are, not through what happens to you. The freedom that arrives when you stop looking for meaning is not the freedom of someone who has everything figured out. It is the freedom of someone who no longer needs to, someone who trusts themselves to create purpose through action, through discipline, through contribution, through presence. Someone who recognizes that every moment offers a chance to live with intention. Someone who understands that the life they want is built, not discovered. Once you reach this stage, something important becomes clear. You no longer live waiting for the world to reveal your purpose. You live revealing it yourself, one decision at a time. Your sense of direction becomes stable because it is based on principles, not feelings. You no longer fear uncertainty because you understand your own capacity to respond to it. You no longer question your worth because your daily actions reflect your values consistently. This chapter leads you to the final truth, the realization that meaning is not given, it is authored. And you have been writing it all along, even when you did not notice. You are the architect of your meaning. There comes a moment in your life when you finally understand that no one is coming to hand you the meaning you have been searching for. Not a mentor, not a partner, not a career, not a breakthrough, not some future version of yourself who suddenly wakes up with everything figured out. You realize that the clarity you have been waiting for is not something to be found, but something to be built. And this realization is both humbling and empowering. It forces you to confront the truth that you alone are responsible for the shape your life takes. But it also frees you from the fear that meaning is something outside of your control. You are the architect of your meaning. Every thought you discipline, every action you take, every value you honor, every decision you follow through on, these are the stones that form the foundation of your purpose. Meaning is not a grand revelation. It is the cumulative effect of living with intention. It is the identity you sculpt through behavior, not the identity you imagine in your mind. And the moment you take ownership of this, your life shifts from something you hope will make sense to something you intentionally shape into coherence. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They accepted that they could not control fate, the world, or the chaos around them. But they also understood that meaning does not depend on external conditions. It depends on the inner structure you build. Marcus Aurelius never waited for clarity. He created meaning through the way he governed, the way he listened, the way he wrote, the way he faced adversity. His life became meaningful not because of his position, but because of his actions within it. You do not need to be an emperor to follow the same path. You simply need to take responsibility for the life you are shaping right now. You become the architect of your meaning the moment you stop outsourcing it. You stop waiting for some external force to validate your path. You stop believing that purpose is something predetermined. You stop thinking that clarity is something you passively receive. Instead, you begin to shape meaning with your character, through consistency, through focus, through the courage to keep going even when the outcome is uncertain. You build meaning by becoming someone who acts from values rather than emotions, someone who does what needs to be done even when it is difficult, someone who chooses responsibility over avoidance. When you design your life with intention, the world no longer feels like something that happens to you. You begin to move differently. You begin to think differently. Your inner dialogue shifts from confusion to direction. Instead of asking, "What is the point of all this?" you start asking, "What can I make of this moment?" Instead of wondering whether you are on the right path, you focus on walking it with integrity. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you adapt to it with strength. Being the architect of your meaning does not mean you control everything. It means you control how you respond to everything. It means you structure your days in a way that reflects your values. It means you choose what kind of person you want to be in every situation. That is where purpose lives, in the way you consistently choose your principles over your impulses, in the way you align your life with what matters to you, not what impresses others. This mindset also brings a profound sense of peace. When you understand that meaning is created, not discovered, you no longer fear making the wrong decision. There is no single correct path you are supposed to find. There is only the path you build through the choices you commit to. Meaning becomes flexible, adaptable, and resilient because you are the one shaping it. Even when life breaks your plans, it cannot break your purpose, because your purpose lives in your principles, not in your circumstances. You begin to see that meaning is not something fragile. It is something forged. It is shaped through discipline, strengthened through action, clarified through reflection, reinforced through contribution, and protected by the standard you hold yourself to, even when no one is watching. Purpose is not a destination waiting at the end of your journey. Purpose is the road you pave with each step, each decision, each moment you choose to live intentionally rather than passively. When you embrace this truth, you stop waiting for your life to make sense. You make it make sense. You stop waiting for direction. You create direction. You stop waiting for meaning. You build meaning. You become the author of your story, the builder of your identity, the architect of your purpose. And that is the moment you finally stop searching. Because you understand that meaning has been in your hands the entire time. You are not lost, you are unshaped. And that is your greatest advantage, because from this moment on, you stop waiting for life to hand you a reason to move and start creating one through every choice you make. Meaning is not something you chase. It is something you build with discipline, with clarity, with the courage to act even when you feel unsure. You are not here to be a passive observer of your life. You are here to shape it with intention, to turn your values into habits, to turn your actions into identity, and to turn your identity into purpose. You are the architect of your meaning, and the life you want begins the moment you decide to create it.